Last week, the United States welcomed a new president, a new administration, and thus a new style of foreign policy under Joe Biden. Countries are now working to recalculate their diplomatic relations with America, and among those countries, of course, is South Korea. Seeking to restart the North Korea denuclearization agenda after talks between former President Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un hit a wall in 2018. It seems South Korea's top office is losing no time to engage the Biden administration to get the dialogue back on track. A major reshuffle took place among Seoul's top-ranking diplomats after Biden named his key foreign policy officials. To discuss this and the latest we're hearing about North Korea, we have joining us today Dr. Ramon Pacheco-Pardo, Associate Professor of International Relations at King's College London, and Dr. Kim Byung-ju, Professor at the Hankuk University of Foreign Studies here in Seoul. Now, welcome to both of you. It's lovely to see you both again. And, well, let's start with you, Dr. Kim. Now, before we get to the change of South Korea's top diplomats, there's been quite a lot of interest over how North Korea would implement a COVID-19 vaccine rollout. So, Dr. Kim, how vulnerable do you think North Korea's healthcare system is right now to the COVID-19 virus? And do you think Kim Jong-un and why do you think Kim Jong-un has continued to refuse Seoul and Washington's offers to help?
The vulnerability of North Korean health system is a well-known one. For decades, they have received outside help in order to deal with the various kinds of health problems in the past. And now this global pandemic, something that the world has never known before, their vulnerability, of course, reaches its peak, perhaps. And sense of crisis, potential crisis is very, very serious at this point. So they are very, very vulnerable situation right at this point, and there's no doubt about it. And about the North Korea's refusal for the help, I guess overall, as they made it clear during their 8th Party Congress recently, on the economic side, as Kim Jong-un has admitted big time, their economic policy and situation have been in a very, very dire situation. So in the second half of the 8th Party Congress, Kim Jong-un kind of emphasized on the other side, the defense side and military capabilities, and they want to make their country strong and so on. So combining the economic difficulties on one hand, and then using military capabilities on the other, plus and minuses, trying to reach a balance there, they don't have a room to accept outside help in dealing with the potential pandemic situation. So it's a very tight political room that Kim Jong-un has to maneuver, and they just can't seem to find the room for accepting this kind of outside help in dealing with the pandemic situation. They have a completely closed border. So when they say they have virtually no case, I mean, I wouldn't believe they have a zero case, but the relative size of it is still kind of relatively small. So under this situation, I think they can indeed afford to use this tactic of refusing the outside help for now, I suppose.
And Dr. Pacheco-Pardo, Western media reported over the weekend that the North Korean regime, has showed interest in joining the global vaccine alliance. So how would a vaccine distribution look in North Korea, and what kind of challenges would they face?
Well, they have applied to Young COVAX, that is known. And it seems that the application is going to be accepted. I mean, there is no reason why it shouldn't be accepted like any other developing country. It can apply and join if it meets a condition. I think there are a couple of challenges. The first one is that North Korea would only be able to use the AstraZeneca Oxford University vaccine because it can be stored between 2 and 8 degrees. And it has the capability to do this. Both WHO and Gavi have said that North Korea could distribute the vaccine quite easily across the country, but it cannot use any of the other vaccines that have to be stored at much colder temperatures. So if we don't have enough doses of the vaccine at the global level, it might be that they don't reach North Korea, they reach North Korea fairly down the road fairly late. So that would be one of the challenges. The second challenge is that we have seen under the sanctions regime, there has been difficulties for humanitarian groups, including Gavi itself, there have been difficulties in transferring medical equipment to North Korea, using, for example, their financial resources, banking services, for example, in North Korea. And this could be a problem for North Korea as well when it comes to the rollout of the vaccine, unless you can get sanctions exemptions. The US has said that that should be not an issue, but under President Trump, we saw that this was an issue. Now, there's one other aspect that we'll have to see, that North Korea would have to allow monitoring of the distribution of the vaccines. They have allowed this in the past, both with Gavi and the WHO. They have been able to monitor the distribution of other vaccines, for example, tuberculosis, hepatitis B, but this was before the pandemic. So we don't know whether North Korea will be willing to reopen the border to foreigners coming into the country. If they don't do this, I think they could be at the end of the queue, because many of the developing countries obviously want to get access to the vaccine, and they are willing to allow monitoring by international institutions.
And Dr. Pacheco Pardo, of course, the regime has continued to strongly deny that the country has been affected significantly by the pandemic. And when South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-wha in December said that she doubted the North has zero COVID cases, she was hit with immense criticism by the sister of dictator Kim Jong-un, who said that Kang will pay dearly for her remarks. And some speculated that this might have been one of the reasons why Kang Kyung-wha was replaced last week as foreign minister. This is, of course, something that Seoul's presidential office has denied. But whether that's true or false, most were expecting her to keep her job until the end of the current administration. What kind of change do you think President Moon Jae-in felt that the foreign ministry needed, especially at this time of transition in US politics?
Well, there have been rumors about Foreign Minister Kang potentially being replaced. I recall last autumn there were initial discussions about is he going to replace or not, depending on what happens with the U.S. election. So I think probably what we're seeing now is that President Moon really wants to focus heavily on the North Korean nuclear issue for the last year of his mandate. When it comes to other foreign policy goals like the New Southern Policy, the goals pretty much have been achieved. So you don't really need such a strong foreign minister focusing on these matters. If you look, for example, at relations with Europe, this is going quite well. So I think he clearly wants to send the message that the last year of his mandate is going to be about trying to improve relations with North Korea. And we shouldn't forget, President Biden has said that he's willing to work with allies. He keeps saying this. And the different nominees for different posts, for example, for Department of State, Tony Blinken, he has said that he is going to consult with South Korea before deciding on U.S.-North Korea policy. So I wouldn't mind that the main goal really is to make sure that the South Korean position is clear to the Biden administration. And we have someone who obviously has been working on North Korean issues for a long period of time. He's well known for having gone to the U.S. and meet President Trump after he was in North Korea as well. So I think what we will see probably is this policy being put at the forefront of discussions between the U.S. And South Korea as the Biden administration settles down.
Right, and Kang's replacement, of course, was Chung Eui-yong, who served as the Special Advisor to the President for Diplomatic and Security Issues. And Dr. Kim, you were Policy Counsel and Special Assistant to the Trade Minister at the Foreign Ministry when Chung Eui-yong was the Deputy Minister for Trade there. And as we can see from his profile, Chung has most recently been serving as the President's Special Advisor, as I just said. And, well, what do you think Chung is going to do differently from Kang Kyung-wha that President Moon Jae-in really wants to see right now?
I think we can think about several different directions. Of course, the directions can be summarized with, as Professor Pardo said, the first word North Korea and the second United States. North Korean side, we all remember his role, 2017-18. Minister Designate Chung is the one who made actually Singapore summit possible by flying to White House and visiting Trump and persuading him to agree to meet with Kim Jong-un for the first time. So on that side, I mean, Minister Designate Chung is the one who spearheaded all these efforts. So in that sense, North Korean side, his role is critical. The United States side, we often forget, Minister Designate Chung is the one who spent years in Washington. He's very much of North American school, what they call within the foreign ministry. He was in Washington during the 90s, about the time when former United States Secretary General Ban Ki-moon was a political affairs minister within the embassy. Their time kind of overlaps, and Chung Eui-yong was economic affairs minister at the U.S. embassy. So he's very much familiar with the U.S., Washington, and even though he built his earlier career as a trade economic affairs, he did so in dealing with the United States. So very much of an expert in terms of how Washington operates. So therefore, it makes a lot of sense at this point when we have new leadership, new president at the White House, having Minister Designate Chung Eui-yong as the head of Korea's foreign policy making. Minister Designate Chung, as I saw him, he was very much loved by his followers. I have tremendous respect for him. He's a man of principle, conviction, and he shows strong drive in achieving goals. And at the same time, he's very loyal and also very flexible. So in my thinking, what Minister Designate Chung will try to do is maintain President Moon's policy towards North Korea, and also adjusting, the overall Korea's dealing with the United States accordingly with the new president. And so I think he will do a great job. He's a man of great capability, and there's a lot of expectation on our side, those of us who have known him over the past several decades.
And Dr. Pacheco-Pardo, as well, both of you mentioned, Chung Eui-yong did head the presidential delegation that coordinated the US-North Korea summits in 2018. What would you say were his major achievements, and what role do you expect him to play over the next 16 months of Moon's government? And also, how do you see him getting along with the Washington officials?
Well, I think that Professor Kim summarized it very well. I mean, he's very well respected. I would say not only in the U.S., internationally as well. If you look at it from Europe, he's also quite well known for his role in dealing with North Korea, trying to help North Korea's relations during the Singapore summit months, right? So I think that the personal relationship with officials in the U.S., knowing how Washington works will be very important, because President Moon only has 1 year more or less until he has to leave office, maybe a couple of months, over a year. And he will probably want to push the Biden administration to review the North Korea policy as early as possible, right? He wouldn't want the Biden administration, come summertime, hasn't really come up with a position towards North Korea. So I think Foreign Minister Designate Chung will be able to call on the right people, tick the right boxes to make sure that the review of the policy process in the U.S. is done more quickly, and crucially, that the view of South Korea is taken into consideration.
And Dr. Kim, of course, to fill Chung's former position as the special advisor to the president, Kim Yeon-jong was tapped for the job, and as we can see from his profile, Kim was the second deputy director of the National Security Office, and before that, trade minister twice for South Korea. What role do you expect Kim Yeon-jong to play, and how do you expect him to really get along with Biden's foreign policy officials?
That's a tough question, but the thing is, in answering that question, what I'm mindful of is that he's not the only one in that position. We have Yonsei University professor Moon Jung-in sitting in that same position still. And so what happened was, before, when current Minister Designate Chung Eui-yong left the National Security Council, he had that position, the current position you're talking about, together with Professor Moon Jung-in. And so this is not a single person capability. And what I'm thinking is Professor Moon, for instance, has exercised a considerable influence over Korea's foreign policy. But however, when current Minister Designate Chung occupied that position, we thought it was more like a transitional position where he was on the way out, in a way, not expecting that much of influence. And I think the same expectation remains. The second person in that position, not exactly sure. When you're just special advisor, you have, as a President Moon's, if you put in the shoes of President Moon, you have Foreign Ministry, you have Unification Ministry, you have National Security Council. You have all these people who are saying their own things based on running their system. And special advisor is more of the individual outside. And I think, in that capacity, the things you can do is pretty much limited. So I don't expect, other than Professor Moon Jung-in, who has been exercising a lot of influence in his capacity, I don't expect anyone to exercise any kind of big influence resembling Professor Moon's capability. So I don't know. The way I see it, the position has its limitations.
Right, well, I'm afraid we're out of time, but I suppose what we can see from this reshuffle is that President Moon really does want to focus on North Korea for the next 16 months, and he's, well, it looks like it's going to be Chung Eui-yong who's going to be leading that process, administratively speaking. Well, that was Dr. Kim Byung-ju at the Hankuk University of Foreign Studies joining us from Seoul, and Dr. Ramon Pacheco-Pardo, Associate Professor of International Relations at King's College London. Thank you both so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, as always, thank you for watching.